We're so thrilled to have everyone with us today. We're so grateful for our friends at Data Crafters for joining us and for Jim for putting this all together. So a few housekeeping notes. We will have 5 attendance checks if we go the full hour. If we only go 50 minutes, we may only have 4, but we'll see how it goes. And all of those will pop up right in the center of your screen. But if you don't see them, I will also put a note in the chat. So just let me know if you're not seeing those and we'll do some troubleshooting. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Jim.
All
Thanks,
right.
Jim.
Thank you, Tiffany. Appreciate it. This is great. I'm Jim Gilbert. I chair the Technology Users Group, and these kind of presentations are what we sponsor a lot. We have great partners that are very smart about what they're doing in terms of technology, and we schedule at least 4 of these per year, if not, and we have monthly meetings as well. So I'd encourage you to join our group if you like what you're get ready to see. I'm excited to present our topic today, driving better decisions with Microsoft Fabric and Power BI to eliminate data drudgery to get from Excel to AI. And Khaled is a guy we've known for a while, and we like him a lot. He's pretty smart at what he does. He's an expert, and we kind of manage him between Tennessee and Colorado, right? We kind of get you on both sides, right? So both groups as well. So. I will be watching the Q&A. Please put in your questions, and I will help Khaled work through those things. We'll try to get your answers to your questions, and please get involved as much as you want to. And without further delay, I'd like to introduce Mr. Khaled and Data Crafters. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I really appreciate the opportunity. Let me get the deck out, and then we can kind of talk through. Not really doing a poll, but how many of you heard of Power BI? I'm guessing about 50% or maybe more that heard of Power BI at this point. If you haven't heard of a Power BI, just drop me a note and whatnot. But I'm guessing I'll come to that later. So maybe I'll just do a quick introduction about myself. My name is Khaled Chaudhary. I'm the principal at Data Crafters. So today I work with different companies helping implement data solutions and trying to get the best out of the data they have. Now, the interesting part is that I did not start my career in data. I am not a CPA. I don't have the energy to go through that exam, but I'm a certified management accountant and certified FP&A. So I have about a decade experience in FP&A. So even about 9 years ago, I was a finance director. And from there, through a series of accidents, instead of becoming a CFO, I ended up being in the role of a CDO. And after a couple acquisitions, I was like, time out, can do this again. So I was like, how hard can it be? With zero experience in consulting, we started consulting around data analytics specialized in Microsoft. So that's kind of a little bit of background. So the easiest way I can explain my background is I am a hybrid between finance, accounting, data, and a little bit on the C-suite side. Just been dealing with this for a while. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat. I'll be happy to answer. Now, Data Crafters, we are a Microsoft solutions partner for data and AI. We're also specialized in analytics on Azure. We also do some work. We are also recognized for digital and app innovation. And specific to Fabric, we're one of the featured partners from Microsoft. Now that is out of the way, let's kind of talk about this. Anybody here not curious about AI or haven't heard about it like 20th time for today? Right? So I think it's kind of everywhere, and compared to the technologies that we have faced before, the first horizon to third horizon, meaning like from it becoming what we say like a buzzword to reality, it's moving faster and faster. It used to take us about 5 years to 7 years before something was a hype to become reality. The AI cloud is moving at less than a year to 6 month cycle, meaning from hype to reality, it's moving too fast. What makes it fun is essentially that even before you can finish a project, something changes, right? So, but that's kind of that. But this is from a study from MIT Sloan, right? 87% of organization, it'll give them a competitive edge, right? So everybody is really excited about this or trying to figure out how to use it, except majority of the people are still stuck in Excel, right? So on one side, you get this utopian view of AI, we're going to do this, it's going to do that, or dystopian view is going to eliminate your jobs and stuff like that. But on the other side, how many of you are still not being able to get out of Excel, right? One thing I was going to say is there's nothing really wrong with Excel, right? So I think if you think about it, is like Excel, we treat it as a database sometimes. It is not a database and things like that. But in general, think about Fabric, Power BI, Excel, and AI and whatnot. The key is how the way you want to judge it is how much data drudgery you have, meaning how much manual work you're doing that's not really value added. So even if you're not using Fabric and Power BI, even in Excel, if your processes are automated enough, you're perfectly fine. But it might not be the case in this cases. As you start leveraging Fabric and Power BI and stuff like that, doesn't mean you really go away from Excel, right? If somebody tells you that Excel is going away, you know what they're trying to sell you at that point. But Excel's there, is just that how we leverage it, how we get the data to Excel a lot of times. And essentially, like, are we doing ad hoc ourselves or answering questions and things like that, right? You're going to see toward the end of the presentation, I'll kind of show you something, but there is more coming. Maybe I'll talk to Jim and come back early next year because even this part is evolving fast from this to agents and conversational stuff. But again, this becomes a foundation as you start moving forward. Now, again, just some stats and whatnot. As we kind of see the market, like even for us as consulting, what we see right now, the market is tight with the economic pressure and things going on, but more and more people are essentially still investing in the area of data analytics, is because it's not just possible to survive in the current market if you have to wait 3 months or a month or even 3 days to figure out what your exposure to some vendor is from one country or one another, right? So from that perspective, we don't really see the impact on the data analytics investments and things like that to slow down. Rather, we kind of see that it's increasing in the market right now. Now, maybe let's kind of step back, right? So you guys tell me if I'm wrong, right? So I've lived this life, and I usually say that I'm a recovering accountant, right? Because I kind of wanted to get out of this Sisyphean task, right? Sometimes, right? Uh, all have overworked teams. We have reports that a lot of times we cannot like trust. We are usually, the most common question we get in a meeting is like, whose number is right? And we get missed opportunities out of that, right? And reporting cycle, think about whatever system you have. You do export to Excel, get the data in there, VLOOKUPs. Maybe you start using XLOOKUPs, index match, or one of the newer array functions and whatnot. But again, it's still a manual process that you're doing that on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, right? So, and as you kind of do, the challenge becomes is, can we scale? We are still dealing with next steps from last week's meeting, and we got new next step that we have not been able to get to yet, right? So the challenge becomes is that we have a human limit factor on whether we can scale in supporting our business, right? Um, Cost efficient data management sounds fancy, but the question becomes is, can we give business the data they need to run the business? So that part of it doesn't change. I mean, like, the one of the key figures I always suggest as you're kind of looking into data initiative and whatnot is that we can get you the data faster, cleaner, and whatnot. And after that, would you make decisions differently? If your answer is that you're not going to decide any differently, don't invest in data. Because the only way that data analytics creates value is through better decisions. And at the end of the day, it does not decide it for you. We're not there yet. And people will say we are data-driven organizations. The one part they don't tell you is that if you're purely data-driven, you're looking based on history, right? Data only can give you history and you can use that to predict some stuff. But at the end of the day, it's kind of still backward looking. As leaders, we have to decide a lot of things when the data is not clear. But the question becomes is, how informed is your gut? It's not a gut decision, but how informed is your gut in the knowing that are you making a decision that you have a track record of failing in, right? So from that perspective, simply the data management or things like that, think about this as how efficient are you in getting business the information they need to run it more efficiently, more profitable. And anybody not worried about data security, right? So essentially the challenge becomes is we put this stuff in Excel and we mail this out. It's in the ether, right? So essentially meaning who's sending it to what and whatnot. You might have built a expense report for the VP that has access to all the departments. And then he has a question about one of them. He just forwards that same Excel file to his entire group or even that one manager that is not allowed to see the data from the other team. Right. So this is just internal, but think about even from external perspective, if people are walking away with data or data being stolen and whatnot, the security and compliance nightmare becomes problematic. Now, actually, let me step back. So from the perspective of the, like just the security perspective, think about if you have 2 business units, 4 regions each with 4 sales manager. That, if you do the math, means you have to create 43 versions of the same report. But now you go through all that and then be like, okay, I'm going to invest in data analytics and whatnot. I kind of should have given you guys a trigger warning. So when I first became a chief data officer about 4 years back, this is what I was handed. Like to do the data solution, these are different pieces of the puzzle that you need. You need something for infrastructure, something for integration, something for analytics, something from machine learning. You have all heard the fancy term called data lakes and whatnot. So if you're trying to do unstructured analysis, you need data lakes. You want to do this, but it's messy, so it becomes data swamp. So you put a lake house on top of it. You hear all this stuff, but anybody who looks at this will not have a great time trying to figure out how to leverage this, especially for us that's come from finance and whatnot, where we understand the business, understand the problem. However, if you look at this, it's like, now I gotta go do something else to be able to give business the thing they need. So this is kind of where the challenge started, right? So in general, like if you think about systems are siloed, data quality is bad, integration is costly. I still remember I was bringing data from Oracle, and just the license to bring the data out of Oracle was $100,000 plus the implementation cost, right? In today's world, it's free, it comes real time, right? We have lagging adoption because of expense and the complexity. A lot of times it's not even expense, it's because of the complexity of it, people, because you couldn't find enough talent. Now, this is where Microsoft has essentially introduced Fabric, right? So I'm guessing most of you have not heard of Microsoft Fabric, but might have heard of Power BI. But let me kind of simplify from the perspective that I understand, explain the best, right? Think about Power BI right now is Microsoft's complete set of capabilities when it comes to business like BI and analytics reporting. So if you want the drag and drop dashboards, the interactive dashboards, if you want the pixel perfect PDF reports, and you want get the data into Excel and whatnot, it works perfectly fine. It's really good at it. The challenge is if you look at the entire data lifecycle, it is much longer. You have to integrate the data, do the data warehousing, and all the other stuff that becomes a scale challenge. So for each one of those, like for example, for every ill, there's a pill, something like that. For every single need, there is a product in Azure that does that. You have Azure Data Lakes, you have Synapse, you have Streaming Hub, and all that stuff, right? And again, but these are different technologies and whatnot. So Microsoft, what they did is they have taken, the easiest way I can explain is that Power BI's capability in this area is this big compared to the entire requirement of data side, but the user base is much bigger. Azure, on the other hand, had a much smaller user base, but much larger in capability. So Microsoft has taken the entire capability of Azure data, and they have packaged it under a SaaS offering. So it's a software as a service. This is not only the different products and capabilities coming from Microsoft Azure, right? The different data products. And they have bundled it into one software as a service offering under the umbrella called Fabric. And it essentially has just entered the realm of Power BI, meaning like Power BI tenant has been taken over by Fabric. And essentially, for those of you who use Power BI, if you log into Power BI right now, half the time you're going to see I think now 90% of the time you see the green logo. Any questions, Ashwar? Jim? Have I put everybody to sleep?
No, doing good. No questions yet.
All right. So essentially, let's kind of spend a little bit of time here. I know we obviously have our finance department here, right? So think about, we have different use cases for that. And as the data is coming through, we have one thing that powers all different departments at the same time. So what you used to get from different, like if you have disparate data sources, if you have some data warehouses and whatnot, we have the capability of having that as unified. And we are allowed to break this out between departments. Not only that, we can break it out between different use case on what you're trying to achieve and what your pain point is at that point. So I kind of like this slide that kind of summarizes it, right? So it's end to end, meaning like from a data perspective, different use cases that you have, it is unified in one place. Meaning if you I need a data lake, it works. If you need a data warehouse, it works. If you want to use IoT data, it still works, right? I'll talk about one more thing around there, but the important part is it's SaaS. Meaning when in my old days, I was implementing one of the data platform, it took me 3 months to spin things up. Fabric is less than a week. It's because some of the things just comes out of the box pre-configured. Your security comes configured. So meaning if you have an Azure SQL database, you would configure it. You have it, that is great. However, you want to leverage it for security, it does not come in built. Meaning if you want to create single sign-ons and stuff like that, that has to be configured. The security policies has to be configured and whatnot. Versus Fabric, day one, it uses your single sign-on. If you're on Office 365, Microsoft Entra, right? The Azure AD of the box, right? Meaning it is not only secure, but it is secure enough to be SOC 2 certified, SOC 2 Type 2, plus it's actually HIPAA compliant. So for any of you that works with the Health Privacy Act, right? So the data out of the box is HIPAA compliant. So if you are working with Snowflake or Databricks or something like that, you would have to buy a different tier of product to get the compliance. In Fabric, it comes out of the box. So that kind of gets that security and compliance out of your head, meaning like you have to know what you're doing to be able to make it unsecure. So intentional bad intent is required from someone with capability and permissions to make it unsecure. So again, the concept from SaaS is extended on the security side, right? Now, the idea here is to understand is like it says lake-centric and open. Now, the key things to understand over here is if you look at the name OneLake, sounds kind of like OneDrive, right? So Microsoft has designed the architecture of Fabric in a way that all the data in the backend is stored into a data lake. However, it's stored in what we call an open format, meaning it's not Microsoft's proprietary, which means as you grow and you want to interoperate, do other things, you have the freedom to leverage the data. It's not locked into your own thing. Now, the key thing to understand over here is that, for example, you start with a project today that requires data warehousing, and tomorrow you have a project that requires a data lake. Now, you need the data warehouse data in the data lake. In the old days, you would have to redo the entire work and pull that in there. In Fabric, we have this concept called shortcut, meaning we can take the data from the warehouse into the lakehouse with just a shortcut, single copy. It'll create a shortcut and bring the data over, meaning you don't have to spend 3 months trying to figure out pros and cons of whether it go this way or that way. As your use cases evolve, like as I was mentioning about if you're dealing with IoT data, unstructured data, structured, semi-structured, whatever you're working with, like Excel, PDF, to say image files and whatnot, like your receipts and all that stuff that's coming through for say like your expenses and whatnot, you could house everything in one place. And as your use cases change, it will change, meaning like you can reiterate, you leverage the work that is done, you don't have to redo that work. Now, coming to the concept of empower every business users, I know in our accounting finance world, we have people with different proficiency. Excel usually is a must, but we end up with folks that have taken the pill for SQL, right? Some of the newer generation have taken the pill for Python and whatnot. But even in the technical world, we have that differentiation that you get folks that are SQL strong, like has good SQL skills. Some folks have good like programmatic Python type skill, but that's growing, but still is a rarity, right? But the larger challenge is that we have this plethora of people that knows the business, understands accounting and all this stuff, but don't have that technical skills, right? And honestly, who wants to go learn, right, how to learn code and stuff like that at this point, right? What Fabric has, it has taken some of the Power BI's capability and whatnot, meaning it is simultaneously pro code and low code. And both are first class citizens in Fabric, meaning if you use Excel, Power Query, and things like that, that Power Query experience is in 5 different places in Fabric. From the concept of Dataflow Gen 2, the visual queries. So Dataflow Gen 2 is a full integration capability. They have taken the same Power Query capability to create a visual query concept for those who don't want to write SQL, meaning you can drag and drop and it will write the SQL for you, right? And at the same time, if you're a pro code person, you have notebooks, Python, and whatnot. So same work can be done in 3 different ways, which can be challenging sometimes. But the reality of it is, if you have a team that has different skill set, you can leverage it. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 that's important to understand is that as we have different people, it's empowered. It does not create silos, meaning we can all leverage each other's work. So for example, if the data is first time, is something complex from some API that your technical team brings it in, and then you use a Dataflow Gen 2 to do something, and then somebody does a SQL transformation to do something else, we can use what is called a pipeline and drag. First thing I want you to do is call the notebook. Second thing is I want you to use the Dataflow. Third thing, I want you to do the SQL. Meaning, even though you 3 of your team built it 3 different things that has to run either consecutively or simultaneously, it can be leveraged together. So the good part is it uses the familiar and intuitive ability that you already have and are expanding. And with the, I mean, it used to be like even last year, it was more of a checkbox, but already this year, it's starting to accentuate how fast we build, even with the things we have. So for example, I am not a SQL person. My SQL is like select from where. After that, I don't really know anything else in SQL, right? But I've been recently writing stored procedures in SQL, but me writing is essentially telling Copilot, I am doing this. Can you make this a stored procedure? Right? So I think that's kind of that part, meaning that we do spend less time trying to figure out the non-value stuff, get to the action part, right? So essentially going back to the original premise that we need to drive better decisions. So instead of talking about whose engine works which way, rather we try to figure out how do we get to the destination faster, right? Now, AI powered from that perspective, that requires its own session. Maybe we'll do that one of the day. But think about how many of you liked being on vacation and getting the text from the CEO saying that, hey, can you give me the last 6 months number for XYZ client and what their DSOs have been? Now, in the middle of vacation, you're sitting there and trying to pull up Excel with bad network, right? Versus Copilot changes that game today, meaning you can go ahead and ask the question, and it is pretty good at answering them today. It requires a little bit of understanding and knowledge change. What I usually say is that Copilot rips the lipstick of the pig simply because you can make a pretty dashboard look like with like, think about it in Excel, you can have a pretty page, but in the back you have like all kind of mess going on. Versus ask the question, that part is gone. It's asking question to the bad data model, right? So there's a little bit of learning, but in terms of the technology itself, it works today. I mean, this is not a demoware at this point anymore, right? So the Q&A with the data, I was in my board meeting yesterday. Someone asked me a question. I was like, let's go test it out because this is one of the key things we're kind of explaining. We tested it out on our own stuff, right?
Khaled, there's one question that came up. Maybe you want to take it.
Go ahead.
Pause. The question is, can we create and automate financial reports using Fabric and Power BI? And then the second half of that question is, will those reports have drill through capabilities?
Yes and yes. So the part I usually suggest on this is question becomes is a couple of things. So I'm going to go off topic a little bit because I think this is perfect place, I think, to answer and relevant for the people is think about when you're doing financial reporting, there's a couple of things that's very important. First of all is stat to gap, meaning tie outs, right? So we do this trial balance tie outs and all kinds of stuff going on, but we also have to show audit trail. Like how the heck did I come up with this number, right? And completeness of the CNA, the completeness and accuracy on one side. Let's talk about ideal scenario, and then I'll go a little bit off things, right? So regardless, and we're doing this for one of our, like, let me give an extreme example. One of the companies we're working with, they have not one, but 13 ERPs. You would think they're a billion-dollar company. They are not. They're growing very fast. They're acquisition focused farm. They have already got to like 120 million-ish revenue, right? So I'm not talking about a company that's in hundreds of billions, right? Even like many hundreds of millions, right? So they have 13 ERPs, right? Now for them, you can understand the nightmare they have to go through to put the financials together. So first of all, what we do is we have to bring, like, instead of bringing in data by trial balance level, right? So account summaries, we actually bring in transaction level data. So you never lose the grain of details. The second thing we do is we extract the trial balance from the system and store it in SharePoint or something like that. The reason we do that is because of completeness and accuracy, because we'll take the detailed data and generate a dynamic trial balance that will check against the extracted one from the system to make sure that you are in control. And one of the things we do in Fabric is that the data comes in raw and every single transformation is traced, meaning how you got from A to B can be traced down. So our audit trails, meaning the data in its raw format, transformation, and everything can be controlled. So that kind of gives you that. Now there's two more pieces to financial reporting. Cash flow gets very difficult, so I'll tell you that upfront, right? Getting cash flow to work properly on an automated system is usually very difficult given what we tend to mess around with cash flow statement, but P&L balance sheet's straightforward, right? Now to get it to work, there's two more things. One is what we called, regardless whether you have one system or multiple system, is your mapping. The chart of accounts. You need to have a very good chart of account that maps to your ledger definitions, to your P&L and balance sheet definitions. And that is something you need to control. You cannot keep, because think about it this way, right? If you're every month you get the Excel and you have your mapping and whatnot, and somebody maps it the wrong way and it flips your P&L the other way, it pulled it out of one account and put it in the other one, right? So that's the second piece that you want to figure out. And then the final piece, this is the part that I was mentioning. It's not ideal, but we do it all the time, which is top sides. We do financial adjustments that's not in the ledger, right? So for those, we also have now essentially leveraged some of the tools that's in Fabric, plus even in Excel and whatnot. So we have that traced in. So from that perspective, like from a regular workflow perspective, instead of your P&Ls and report generated for every month on the 5th or 6th day, that thing generates every single day. The data is coming in. So how does that change behavior? First of all, all the things that are not mapped, you're using new general ledger, like new journal, like a new account, chart of accounts and stuff like that. It'll automatically come back and say, hey, we have this 5 general ledger accounts that we have not mapped. Can you map those for me? Right? You have made some entries. You have gone back and made an entry into period that you closed, and that would have thrown off a delta versus what you extracted as a general ledger balance. It'll throw a flag saying that you're not in tie. So essentially, you have to kind of do that. And the final piece, as I think mentioned, like the journal ledger comes in. Now, you take that when we build the information, one of the key difference when we build in Power BI is that instead of building it from the perspective of, like think about month report, the idea has granular transaction details. Anytime you're summarizing, it's summarizing for you in that visual. Meaning when you see that, hey, Mike, like say my OpEx is off by X million. You can click on it, opens up your OpEx bucket, salaries, wages, T&E, insurance, all that fun stuff, right? And then you see that, okay, something happened in my T&E, right? And you might have 5 business units and whatnot. Depending on how you visualize and whatnot, you can further do it, or there you can right click and straight drill through. And again, by design, you can go to either to a detail or a cost center report. The key is you're capable of going down to a transaction to say is like, I'll put Jim under the bus. Jim went on a trip to Vegas and instead of using his personal card, by mistake, put it on his business card, it'll pop right there. I'm not saying Jim does that, but the idea is that it's built into from that perspective that in the old days, think about the reason we didn't do it this way in Excel is simply because Excel could not hold that much information. If I loaded every single journal ledger for last 20 years, that Excel, for the last 20 years, even a single year will crash. We don't have that problem. And because we don't build reports of summaries, because once you build something based on extract of a trial balance to something else, we lose granularity at each layer. Versus in this design, even though we're looking at it from the high level, because you have to find the variance on the high level, otherwise you're going to be lost in the weeds. We start on the top level, and from there, we find the problem, drill through. As CFOs, your conversation changes. As CFOs and whatnot, you might have 4 or 5 controllers reporting to you and kind of saying like, sending it back to your FA, like, hey, why is this off? Versus the conversation becomes is, what happened here? Exactly, you send the transactions. And the difference, what I was kind of talking about from a security perspective, the one that you are looking at as a business leader, finance leader, that business unit is looking at the same thing, except they cannot see other than their business unit. Hence, you at the same time feed everybody the same information, but maintain security while automating and getting that benefits, right? So getting, again, that insight to action faster. Oh, that's not a problem, right? The other behavioral change I see that is usually very valuable comes to essentially close process. So think about this way, right? We all do this. We go through close. After that, we'll send out the cost center reports, and the business comes like, I didn't spend that much. I'm missing this expense, right? Versus because this is a live thing, on day 2 of close or day 3 of close, before you close the books, it's like, hey, your management reports, the temporary is up and running. Why don't you go review? You set up reviews before you close the books to catch the things and fix it instead of making and opening and reclosing a specific month and period. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yes, sir. I think it does.
All right. But again, like coming back to this, right? It's quite simple. Think about, you have ERPs, your structured data, Excel, PDF, and whatnot. That's your data coming from, and you have your CXO, C-suite. They have a different need of information. Your managers needs the information more granular, and then you have analysts that needs the information even in further granular, right? So from that perspective, how do you get the data from this supply and demand perspective in a secure, scalable, and sustainable manner? So for those of you who haven't like, my background is in economics, so I'm still very much married to the idea of supply and demand. um, again, like I've been kind of saying, like real-time data availability, right? Now the question is, it can respond to the definition of what you mean by real-time data. And it depends people to people. What I mean by that is, for some people, daily data is real-time. For some people, every hour refresh is real time. And we have situations when we're doing with, and this is not something we face in finance, but this is something we face especially in the manufacturing and production floor areas. This is near real time, meaning like you can never be real time, to be honest, if you're not in the system. But we can get down to sub-seconds, meaning like it comes down to 2 to 3 seconds lag before the data shows up, right? And if you look at the curve, it used to be like, think about our consolidation systems and stuff like that, which we load the data once a month. If you try to do that every day, it would be very expensive. Every hour would be like, think about how many people you gotta hire. Versus the curve has actually flattened. It's actually better to load the data every day or every couple of hours. The cost is kind of the same. Like you use more resource on the technical side, but it's negligible. But the architecture allows you to get up to how many ever refreshes. These are called the concept of batch. What we call a sub-second type freshness for manufacturing type data. These are called real-time analytics, RTI, real-time intelligence. That one is expensive. So once you try to make that change can be a little bit expensive because of not as much on the implementation or cost, but on the capacity, because that thing never sleeps. It's continuously checking every sub-second to see if there's new data in processes, right? One of the things that's happening with AI powered and whatnot is that this is one of my new favorite thing to do. So for example, I built a cost dashboard for one of our clients, right? This is to do with cloud cost, right? So they spend close to $100,000 a month, like I have not like a ginormous amount in cloud cost bills, right? We built a dashboard for them, which they love because they put data from Azure AWS in one place. But now what we have done is they used to look at it every day. Now they look at it like a human sentencing. That's all they look at, because when the dashboard refreshes in the morning, we have said, has this happened? If not, tell me. So essentially raise a flag when something goes bad. Other than that, it's fine. Just let it run. Again, like the automation saves, like we have definitely more things to do than we have hours in a day. This definitely helps us get to that part, right? This is essentially what I've been kind of talking about, right? You just don't have to worry about it. right? Out of the box, it comes the compliance, the single sign-on, VPN, granular data access control. If you have business in Europe and US, you got to separate the data into geo regions. You got to pay for it, but it's essentially just a couple of buttons and clicking them, storing them separately. Now, from a scalability perspective, this is tightly integrated, like things work with each other, right? One of the things that I feel like that makes it more scalable is the fact that we can leverage our teams, right? It empowers every users. From a sustainable perspective, it's a software as a service, meaning you don't have to go hire 10 people to manage this anymore. Because the data engineering, think about it this way, right? You have data engineering, data science, and whatnot. So if somebody says there's no management, that is wrong. There is still some management, but that has gone down astronomically. Let's see. But again, this is kind of just a sample architecture. If you think about it, how you can visualize is that you have different data sources. It has three different methods, not really three different methods, but three different gross classification of the capabilities of bringing the data in. So think about, you might have the data from the ERP coming with general ledger transactions. Then you might have non-native stuff that's not there coming that way. You might have some data coming from your mapping and stuff like that coming that way. We have the data in the raw, no transformation, the data as is. This is the second copy of the data where we transform it and clean it up. And then we do the curation, and then we can push the data into Excel, Notebook, Power BI, however you want, based on the folks that have specific needs. And this gives us the audit trail with all the good stuff, and at the same time, live reporting. Okay, you say, think about, at the end of the day, just bring all your information together. That concept of data warehousing, data centralization becomes more and more if you're trying to get to AI. Your AI is as good as your data. So it will confidently tell you to go jump off the cliff if you give it wrong data. So AI from that perspective is very human. It will confidently say things that it thinks it's true. So from that perspective, you kind of have to pay more attention. Like think about every single of your AI project is gonna need data. If you cannot give it the proper data, people are just gonna get bad answers. So again, one of the part, it's essentially like think about, you have different systems, you can like bring it together, right? Let's see, I think I can probably skip through this. Any other questions in the meantime, Jim? So if you notice, if I click on Power BI, it'll take me to Fabric now, right? So essentially, for those of you that has been using Power BI, Fabric has kind of popped up in the same place. Just to give an idea, for those of you who have not used Power BI, here is your interactive. As you click on stuff and do things, it will respond with you, right? So that the 100 different reports we ended up making for regions and whatnot just is part of the one thing. Let's see what else is in here. I should have a drill through example that the question that you're asking. Let's see. There you go. So for example, I was looking at by year and I want to see the quarters, or sorry, the months. It just went to the months. And now I want further details. I should have a drill through somewhere here. Let's see. So again, as you notice, like every different iterations of it can be kind of there. And here I go, I want to see the details of it. Here's the transactional details, right? So think about doing the same thing with your P&L line items, right? To get to your actual transaction. And this is what I was kind of mentioning earlier. So even this recording is about 3 months old or so. you're going into executive meeting, what's the 3 things I need to talk about? It will summarize. You might not have to write that dreaded variance report one more time. It is really, really good at that. If you visualize the data with the variances, it can summarize this for you. And you can do this without putting your data into ChatGPT, where you might not have the security and the safety of it. Here, Microsoft gives you the security and the safety of it. And then this one, I think it's the same thing, right? Oh, so this one is essentially like the question, like the ones that you're on vacation, they want some questions answered. There you go. You know, that ad hoc questions that we end up doing. These are things that works today, right? This is not, like I say, this is not demoware. But the key is you have to have your data clean. You have to have your data in Power BI and whatnot. And this, I think, is probably my most favorite feature of Power BI, meaning that I can bet money on people you cannot build a pivot table faster than this. Meaning, as we build this report in Power BI, I have direct connectivity of that in Excel. Meaning, this beats export to Excel. Meaning, we don't even have to export to Excel. This thing loves Excel. Meaning, I will say that proudly, like I still use Excel every day, right? And it's just how I use it is different today than what I used to. And again, this is, for example, just to show, for example, here, one of my devs is showing that is his view. And now he's showing maybe I only have access to one of the companies. If you notice, the dashboard just completely changed for me and whatnot. This is an example of your row level security, which allows us to get out of the data drudgery when it comes to how many people have access to what and specific granularity. But anyways, like I think that kind of brings me to towards the end, right? When I started this, the idea was that there was too many people starting projects that never getting value. And that's why we say we have kept it simple. We focus on getting the right data in the hands of right people at the right time. Think about that's been our job for centuries, I guess, at this point, in accountants and finance folks, right? And this allows us to do that. But the predication is that this enable better decisions. Again, this is a little bit from the data crafters, like I said, our background and whatnot. But maybe it's good time I can maybe switch to Q&A if people have any specific questions, comments, and discussions. One thing I can kind of show, the easiest way to connect with me is I think Tiffany is sending this deck out, Jim, right?
She is.
Yeah,
Yep.
so you can connect with me on LinkedIn or something like that. That's the easiest way, please, to get a hold of me. But like I said, the future of analytics is here. It's not tomorrow and whatnot. It's changing very fast, but it requires, the journey requires evolution. You're not going to be able to go from riding a bicycle. Like, for example, if you're riding a bicycle, you can go from that to riding a Tesla because it drives on its own, for example. However, for your data, you still have to get the data centralized, cleaned up, and then move on. You cannot just go to having nothing to AI from that perspective.
Right. So Khaled, are you going to use Fabric more often than not? Than I think a lot of us think about. We're just going to use Power BI, right? What's the decision point of whether I can use Power BI to start doing some BI, or when do I need to use Fabric?
So the way I can suggest is that start with Power BI. You might not need Fabric in its full capacity, right? But I would suggest starting using Fabric today from a different perspective. You saw the Copilot capability when I was chatting with the data. That's a Fabric feature. Power BI does not have the chat capability, right? So from that perspective, and the difference is Fabric is capacity based and you can get started very cheap, very fast. Meaning for $300 a month, you can turn on Fabric. Even if you keep your data in Power BI Pro and PPU, you can leverage it for Copilot, right? And
Okay.
that's kind of the way I kind of think about it. Do you really need Fabric all the time? No. But as you scale, right? So now you've got the chat done. Now you want to build like a data agent, right? So you heard of the agentic AI and stuff like that. Those are all Fabric features, right? Where you can build agents that you can take it to teams, meaning you can have interactive questioning, answering from that perspective.
Right. Any other questions for Colette? I'll have more if they don't.
You can go ahead while if people have any other questions.
Yeah, so I see that there's a suite of individual products that are part of the Fabric infrastructure that you put a slide up for that, right? And so, as an accountant, so would it not make sense if I just had a Fabric account up front and because it looks like it's got Power BI and it's got data warehouses, it's got a bunch of other things inside of that, right? Does it make sense to jump in
Absolutely,
right?
really good question. So from
Yeah.
a Fabric perspective,
Hmm.
use only what you need. Do not try to use everything. The
Okay.
good part is everything comes out of the box. Just because, like, the old proverbial thing, just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? Um, the focus with Fabric is that you can use what you need today and then add the things what you need tomorrow, right? You don't have to go change strategy, but don't try to use everything. I mean, even personally, right? I'm not a data engineer, right? So I don't go open up like Scala scripts and stuff like that, or environment and whatnot, right? Some people in my team does, right? So I think that's kind of the way you build up from the experiences. But think about one of the things that I want you everybody to think through is that once you have the data in Power BI, it is very good for insights. However, it is not good for building more analysis, meaning you have to go back to the model and because it's designed for sharing insights, not data.
Mm-hmm.
If you have that data, the same thing you do, just stage the data through a lakehouse in Fabric and then take it to Power BI.
Mm-hmm.
As you have a different use case, you can use the other data for the separate use case without redoing. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the part that you want to keep in mind. But if you already use Power BI today, the first thing I would go tinker with is essentially go test how well you built your Power BI. Ask it a question with Copilot, see if it goes right or wrong. You
Mm-hmm.
would know that how good your Power BI models are at that point.
Gotcha. How do we get the resources? How do we know where to figure this out about Fabric and those kind of things? Where do we go to get those resources as an accountants, right? Where do
So I
we
think
start?
Microsoft Learn has really good materials. So this
Okay.
is completely free. Microsoft Learn, it has good materials. The one of the things that I can also suggest, maybe I'll send. I don't have the link handy. I'll send it out the meeting if Tiffany wants to send it out. Microsoft does Fabric Analyst in a Day program. It's completely free as well. So we host them as well. I think we have one happening on September 5th. So they can attend that. This is a good place to get started. If you have an Office account and whatnot, from that perspective, you can go try on a Fabric trial. Just one caution is when Microsoft gives you 2 months of Fabric for free, the machine they give you costs $5,000 some. So just make sure you adjust your expectation because they give you a very powerful machine. Not that you need it when you run the trial, but Microsoft gives you essentially $10,000 worth of machine for free. When you have anybody can turn on a trial. Anybody who has an Office Microsoft account with Power BI, you can turn on a trial, go try it out.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that doesn't work in the trial is Copilot because Microsoft has to pay extra money to OpenAI for that. So that part has to only works with the paid SKU. But again, like I said, you can get a Fabric SKU for $300 a month, the small one.
Okay. About 300 a month. Okay. Gotcha. Versus $9.99 a month for Power BI or whatever it is, right? I think.
Yeah. So the difference is Fabric capacity is capacity based, not user based.
Yeah.
So it's a capacity, like you get certain amount of compute capability. So it scales linearly as well. Every time you double, the cost goes up.
Right. Okay. Any other words of wisdom for us? We got a few more minutes left, and what else can you recommend for this good group of people?
I think about we like it or not, things are changing fast and faster, right? So to give you two examples is that the way I run my own thing as a company is I'm on QuickBooks, right? So my data from QuickBooks shows up in my Fabric every 15 minutes,
Mm.
right? And I have my dashboards and stuff like that right on top of it,
Mhm.
right? So that might seem one perspective. A friend of mine who runs a CPA farm, they're not that big, probably around $5 to $10 million in range. We recently did bring in about 600 or 800 of their QuickBooks account into Fabric. So the integration brings, so essentially their automation level is like the activity that we helped automate for them, it's essentially 70% faster.
Mm.
So one of the things that I want to kind of say is that go try this out, go figure it out and whatnot. One of the key things is like Power BI democratized the access to business intelligence to all levels of business. So Power BI is used by a company that makes $50,000 a year to billions of dollars a year. Fabric essentially does the same thing. It brings all the capabilities to your fingertips, and you kind of start from that perspective.
So, quick question, Colette, is
QB Desktop, QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Desktop is still a royal pain in the butt.
yeah. Okay.
There are integrations for QuickBooks Desktop, but none of them is pretty,
Yep.
right? Can you do it? Yes. It's just for QuickBooks, a lot of times we usually end up doing an extract and then kind of take it from there. So that way, the difference in effort, right? So we can automate that. There's a way, there's a additional product you can buy. It works like a connector and whatnot. But you have to take a backup whenever that's running. It doesn't let the book close and all kinds of fun stuff. So unfortunately, QuickBooks Desktop is still a royal pain in the behind. But apart from that, QuickBooks Online works like a charm. Like I said, when I talked about the 600 accounts, that's coming from QuickBooks Online.
Right. Sounds great. Any other questions? Now's your chance.
Like I said,
Well,
I think it was a pleasure. Thank you, Jim, for the opportunity,
thank you.
right?
We
And
appreciate it.
then obviously, if you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out. And then I would say go ahead and get started, try it out, see what's going on, and then take it from there.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, and we all appreciate your wisdom and your time today. And thank everybody that participated today. Had a good turnout. So from the technology users group, I appreciate it as well. And we'll have more of these, more to come. So thank you again.
Thanks, Jim. Y'all have a good week. Take care.
See you later.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Khaled.